Welcome to the deep dive, where we really plunge into complex topics to bring you the clearest understanding possible. If you're looking to get genuinely well informed, quickly, thoroughly, you are absolutely in the right place. And hey, for more deep dives like this one, make sure to visit Mind Expansion Daily. Definitely like and subscribe. Today, we're tackling a subject that, well, let's be honest, it gets thrown around a lot in debates. It's often misunderstood and sometimes, frankly, clouded by some pretty inflammatory stuff. Arranged marriages in Islam. We're talking everything from, serious allegations about supporting pedophilia to just general cultural stereotypes. So our mission today, challenge those misconceptions, explore the historical side, the cultural nuances, and really uncover the real human implications. We'll be looking at tradition versus modern ethics, drawing on religious teachings, sociological insights, and contemporary examples, all current as of August 29th, 2025.
It really is a fascinating topic, mostly because it's so deeply rooted in history and culture. But at the same time, it's just widely misunderstood today. It touches on faith, family, individual autonomy. Really profound stuff. Our goal here is simple. Help you cut through the noise, understand not just what this practice is, but maybe more importantly, why it matters. Hopefully, we can foster a more empathetic, accurate picture for everyone listening.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the beginning then. When we talk about arranged marriage, where does that actually, where does it come from? Is it uniquely Islamic? Because our research, our deep dive suggests it's really not just an Islamic thing, right?
No, you're absolutely right to broaden that scope. It's definitely not isolated. Arranged marriages or family-involved marriages, they're woven into, well, countless cultures for centuries. Think about Hindu societies, Jewish traditions, even pre-18th century Europe, actually. Before romantic love became the main reason for marriage, unions were often about family, community, stability. In Islam, these practices date back to the Prophet Muhammad's time. And the initial purpose is pretty practical, community-focused. Things like strengthening social bonds, ensuring compatibility between families, providing security for the individuals within that structure.
Right. So it wasn't like some specific religious rule handed down, but more about social structure, practicality, much like in other older societies. And the sources are clear, aren't they? The Quran and Hadith, they emphasize marriage as this sacred bond based on mutual consent and respect, not necessarily demanding the arranged part itself.
Exactly. And actually, Islam brought what was, for its time, a really progressive shift, particularly for women's rights. If you picture pre-Islamic Arabia, women often had very few rights. Marriages were often just tribal alliances, for politics or economics. Islam changed that. It specifically required the woman's consent. There's that really powerful hadith. A matron should not be given in marriage except after consulting her, and a virgin should not be given in marriage except after her permission. Quote, quote. I mean, that was incredibly empowering back then when women rarely had such agency anywhere in the world. Then, over time, as Islam spread, different cultural influences like in South Asia or the Middle East, they blended with these core teachings. And that led to this prevalence of family-facilitated matchmaking, what we call arranged marriage, where families play a big role in suggesting partners, sure, but the individual's approval, their consent, that remains absolutely essential.
That's such a critical distinction. Consent is key. So this isn't just ancient history we're talking about, is it? Because what's really interesting is how these roots still shape things today. What does it actually look like now in the modern world?
Oh, it's definitely still relevant, but it's a spectrum. For instance, you look at countries like Pakistan or Indonesia, arranged marriages still make up a pretty big chunk, maybe 50–60% of unions. But even there, it's often more like families make an introduction, and then there's a courtship period. The couple gets to know each other. And interestingly, recent research like that 2024 Pew survey found almost half of Muslims in South Asia view arranged marriages positively. They often cite things like stability, family harmony.
Yeah.
And then in the West, among Muslim communities, you see the rise of what people call assisted marriages. Families might suggest people use their networks, offer advice, but the final decision, that rests entirely with the individuals. It's a clear adaptation, showing that emphasis on personal choice.
Okay, now, here's where it gets, well, really charged, and maybe where the most damaging misconceptions lie. We have to tackle this head on. The idea that Islam somehow supports pedophilia through arranged marriages. This accusation comes up a lot.
Yes, this is absolutely critical to address, and it raises a really important question, doesn't it? Are we mixing up 7th century norms with 21st century ethics, or maybe confusing specific cultural practices with religious doctrine itself? This misconception often links back to interpretations of the Prophet Muhammad's marriage to Aisha, and there is historical debate about her age. Some hadith texts suggest she was maybe 6 at betrothal, 9 at consummation, but other scholars, through detailed biographical analysis, people like Ibn Hajar, place her age closer to 15 to 19 at marriage. Modern scholars like Dr. Jonathan Brown in his book Misquoting Muhammad, they argue pretty convincingly that these accounts reflect 7th century cultural norms. Early marriage was common then across many cultures, including Europe. It wasn't meant as a rule for all time.
That distinction, historical context versus universal mandate, it's huge. But it must be hard for people outside the culture not to blur those lines, especially when you still see child marriage happening, whatever the root cause.
It's incredibly difficult. And sometimes, let's be honest, those lines get blurred intentionally. When we see child marriages today, say in Afghanistan or Yemen, our deep dive shows it's usually driven by really complex factors: poverty, lack of education, deep-seated local traditions. It's not an Islamic mandate. The Quran itself doesn't actually set a specific marriage age. What it does emphasize is maturity. You see this in chapter 4, verse 6. Test the orphans until they reach marriageable age. Then, if you find them mature of mind, deliver to them their property. So the focus is clearly on mental emotional readiness, not just a number.
Right. So what is the reality in most Muslim-majority countries today regarding the minimum age for marriage? Because it certainly doesn't sound like it's 6 or 9 anywhere now.
Oh, absolutely not. Far from it. Reports from UNICEF, other organizations, they clearly show over 90% of Muslim-majority countries have set minimum marriage ages, usually between 16 and 18. We've seen major legal reforms just in the last couple of decades. Morocco in 2004, Jordan in 2017 both raised their marriage age to 18. That shows a clear global trend. So that pedophilia label, it just completely ignores the fact that forced or underage marriage fundamentally violates core Islamic principles like consent and justice principles that were, again, revolutionary for their time. Major organizations like the Islamic Society of North America have explicitly condemned child marriage as un-Islamic. And it's also powerful to see Muslim feminists leading this charge. There was that 2024 X post, got something like 12,000 likes, really highlighting how cultural patriarchy, not religion, is often the driver. That kind of internal push for reform is gaining real traction.
Okay, so setting aside the controversies for a moment, when these marriages are done consensually, what are the potential upsides? And what challenges, despite reforms, still hang around? Because it's complex, right? Pros and cons.
It absolutely is complex. And when it's based on genuine consent, arranged marriages can offer some real benefits that often get overlooked. They tend to prioritize compatibility, shared values, family background, faith. That can build a really strong foundation. There was a fascinating study in 2023, Journal of Marriage and Family, suggesting divorce rates can be significantly lower in consensual arranged marriages, something like 15% versus maybe 40% in global love marriages. Now, it's not just a statistic. It points to something deeper, maybe a focus on broader compatibility, shared values, kind of pre-vetted support system for the families involved. And as we mentioned, you see these semi-arranged models becoming common. Families introduce, but individuals have the final say, the veto power. That 2024 survey found this in 70% of urban Pakistani unions. It's a blend.
Right, so the family acts more like a trusted introduction service, maybe? But the ultimate choice lies with the couple. That seems like a practical way to merge tradition and personal freedom. But what about the other side? The challenges that definitely persist when consent isn't there, or when cultural pressures just become too much.
Yeah, that's the crucial flip side. While consensual forms have benefits, we absolutely have to acknowledge the serious challenges, especially coercion. Coercion, often tied to really difficult concepts like family honor, it can affect a significant number, maybe up to 20% of women in some communities, and the mental health impact is severe. We're talking depression in nearly 30% of those cases, according to a 2023 WHO report. And the age issue, despite legal progress, it's still a problem in certain areas where deeply ingrained cultural norms just clash with international standards, and even national laws sometimes. UNICEF still reports 12 million child marriages globally each year. About 20% of those are in Muslim-majority countries. But it's important to note, there is progress. Those rates have actually dropped by about 15% since 2010, largely thanks to education campaigns and advocacy.
That's significant progress, yeah, but still a sobering number. What other shifts are happening? Are there specific examples of positive change or ongoing struggles?
Definitely. Look at Indonesia. They raised the marriage age to 19 in 2022 and saw a reported 10% drop in child marriages fairly quickly. That's tangible. And organizations like the Aga Khan Development Network in Pakistan, they're educating tens of thousands of girls annually about their rights. And it's delaying marriage by an average of 2 years in those communities. You see this shift reflected online, too. That 2025 X post celebrating a Moroccan woman choosing her partner, 15,000 likes. That shows evolving attitudes in the celebration of agency. Psychologically, the contrast is stark. Consensual arranged marriages. Studies show they can foster strong bonds, high satisfaction, like that 2024 Indian study showing 65% satisfaction. But non-consensual ones, they often lead to trauma, anxiety. A 2023 Psychiatry Journal analysis linked them to 40% rates of anxiety and distress. Socially, yes, arranged marriages can strengthen community ties, but they can also, if not handled carefully, reinforce gender inequalities. That 2024 UNDP report noted half of arranged marriages in South Asia still had limited input from the woman.
And child marriage just makes everything worse. Higher school dropout rates, higher maternal mortality, according to UNICEF. So laws like Pakistan's 2019 Child Marriage Restraint Act, raising the age to 18, they reportedly reduced incidences by 10%. But enforcement, especially in rural areas, that's still a major hurdle.
Okay, to really bring this home, let's imagine we're right there, listening in. Our deep dive included perspectives from Muslim Filipinos in Manila, real people, real stories. What did those voices add?
Oh, this part was so insightful because these individual stories, they just perfectly highlight the complexities we've been discussing. It grounds everything. I remember talking to Fatima. She was 28, just vibrant. Her story captured that semi-arranged idea beautifully. She said, my parents introduced my husband. Yes, we honored that, but then we dated for a year. It was absolutely about my consent. It just cut through the stereotypes. Then you had Ahmed, 35, who was quite critical. He said, in my village, girls marry at 16. It's cultural, not religious. That nails the distinction we keep coming back to. Aisha, just 22, was adamant. Islam requires maturity. Child married is abuse. Simple as that. And Imam Khalid, he kept bringing it back to the Quranic teachings. Marriage is for adults. These pedophilia claims misinterpret history. And Maria, who converted to Islam, she had this great analogy. Arranged doesn't mean forced. It's kind of like matchmaking apps, but your family's the algorithm.
Oh.
These voices, they got shared widely, 10,000 likes on an X post sharing these snippets. It just shows the power of nuance over generalizations.
It's so powerful hearing those personal takes. It makes it obvious there isn't just one way this happens. And the source material also mentioned visiting a mosque, a workshop on consent in Manila. How did that firsthand experience connect?
That immersion was crucial, yeah. It just revealed the layers. Being there, hearing the discussions, it was echoed in another X post with 12,000 shares. People really resonated with seeing that complexity, talking to people after prayers, hearing Fatima's happiness alongside Ahmed's valid concerns, sitting in that workshop where 30 people were debating how Islamic principles apply today.
Yeah.
It painted such a vivid picture. Imam Khalid clarifying texts, Maria bridging cultural gaps. It showed that even within a traditional framework, the application, the lived experience, it's incredibly diverse. It's constantly evolving.
So pulling back a bit, what are the bigger implications here? Why does getting this right, understanding it accurately, actually matter beyond the individuals involved for society?
Oh, the implications are huge. First off, understanding promotes cultural empathy. That directly combats Islamophobia, which, according to that 2024 Pew study, still taints about 25% of global discourse on Islam. Cutting through myths builds respect. Second, it fuels reform. Look at Tunisia's 2017 law banning child marriage. That didn't just happen in isolation. It reportedly influenced about 10 other Muslim-majority countries to look at similar changes. Accurate understanding empowers reformers. And globally, better understanding fosters better intercultural relationships, period. We see trends like 15% of U.S. marriages being interracial in 2024? That suggests growing openness and understanding different cultural practices like arranged marriage is part of that. Even locally, like in the Philippines, where maybe 6% of Muslims practice semi-arranged marriage, education is actively reducing stigma according to a 2023 survey. It helps integration.
And looking forward, how are modern life, globalization, technology, how are they challenging and changing these traditions? Because nothing stays static.
Exactly. Globalization is definitely having an impact. It's eroding some of the purely traditional aspects. That 2024 global poll showing 40% of young Muslims prefer love marriages. That reflects a shift towards prioritizing individual choice even more explicitly. Now, while forced marriage is illegal in over 90% of Muslim countries, it does still persist, sadly, in maybe 10% or so, often driven by crushing poverty, not religious belief. Legal reforms, like Egypt raising the marriage age to 18 back in 2008, that cut child marriage rates by 20%. So laws matter. But cultural resistance, especially in more isolated rural areas, that remains a huge challenge. It needs grassroots work, education. But the conversation's happening very publicly. That 2025 X post debating arranged versus love getting 18,000 likes. It shows people are hungry for balanced discussions, for understanding how these norms are evolving right now.
Wow. We have certainly taken a deep dive today. So what's the bottom line? What should you take away from all this?
Well, the key points seem clear. Arranged marriages in Islam, often profoundly misunderstood. At their core, rooted in consent and compatibility, not coercion or these awful age disparity claims. The misconceptions, especially the really inflammatory ones about pedophilia, they just ignore historical context and the very real modern reforms happening. Most Muslim countries do have legal marriage ages of 16 to 18 now. Balancing tradition with ethics, like we heard in those stories from Manila, that fosters empathy. And while the practice can offer stability, there's still a vital need for progress against forced unions and child marriage practices condemned by Islamic principles themselves.
Absolutely. And this whole ongoing dialogue, it just reminds us that tradition isn't some fixed monument. It's alive, it adapts, it evolves. Real understanding means looking past the headlines, past the easy stereotypes, into the history, the culture, the individual lives. It challenges us, really, to question our own assumptions. I mean, maybe here's a final thought to chew on. Consider how our own cultural practices, things we just take for granted as normal, might look through the eyes of someone from a completely different background. How much do we truly understand about the why behind traditions that just seem foreign to us?
That is a powerful thought, and it's exactly why we do these deep dives. We genuinely love hearing from you, so please share your thoughts down in the comments. Did you agree with our summary? Disagree? Let us know. And definitely tell us where you're listening from. We're trying to reach people worldwide, so knowing where you are helps Mind Expansion Daily grow. Remember to visit Mind Expansion Daily, like this, subscribe for more content, and hey, if you really appreciate what we do, you can buy us a coffee. The link is right there in the description. It helps keep these deep dives going. Thanks for joining us, and make sure to look out for our next deep dive exploring cultural practices around the globe.